You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers.
What is up, listeners of the podcast? Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry if it sounds a little weird. I am literally working on my truck at my mom and dad's farm. I am, I was just a second ago crawling under the hood of my 94 Chevy K2500 four-wheel drive 5.7. That's having ignition problems, unfortunately, and it is an ice storm, so that's really, really cool. But you don't care about that. What you care about is this week's guest, Mr. Jason Mays from Working Class Music. Working Class Music is a fantastic YouTube channel. I've had Jason on the show before. I've podcasted with him many, many times, and we always have excellent conversations, both on and off camera. I'm being attacked by a cat. It's quite the ordeal, folks. It's an ice storm here on top of this truck problem. But anyway, yes. So if this sounds wildly different and wildly unprofessional, I'm covered in grease right now. So what are you gonna do? Anyway, yeah, check out Working Class Music. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. And if you're not familiar with the channel or with Jason, go back and check out the first time they came on the podcast. It was just a couple of years ago, and they've just grown. And Jason and I always have epic conversations. So without further ado, let's get right into it. What do you say? All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today I have one of my favorite people to converse with, Mr. Jason Mays of Working Class Music. What's going on, dude?
Hey, what's going on, Blake? Over here kicking it in 2024 now, so yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that the end of the world hasn't happened yet.
Well, maybe when you hit that like 500,000 YouTube subscriber, maybe that'll be when it finally, you know what? We've done it. Let's call it good. Shut it down.
Yep, that's probably what'll happen. Get that gold YouTube plaque. So
keep it at $4.99 for us, and we'll be okay. We won't have to worry about it. You just have to unsubscribe people.
Yeah, those people that they find a reason to unsubscribe, like, oh my God, you don't know what you're doing. Unsubscribe.
You just figured that out?
Bro, that's YouTube. We don't know what we're doing.
No, we don't know. We just plug things in and see what happens.
Yes, it's like, hey, I make noise with a guitar. That's the channel.
That's the channel. Welcome to it.
Yeah.
You just recently started your own channel. I mean, you're still doing Working Class Music, but you started your own channel as well. And we haven't really talked about that at all. What was the motivation behind that? Why did you decide to do that? Because it seems like similar content, not exactly the same, but
yeah.
What was the deal there?
As you know, Working Class Music is a group of 4 people. And sometimes, for a little bit, I didn't want it to come across as the Jason Mays show with a lot of the things, because a lot of the things that, the audience would see would be, things that I'm interested in, but not necessarily all of us are interested in as a group. So, with writing with guitar.com and reviewing gear, that way it kind of just felt more ideal, especially since this year I want everybody to have a voice. Well, in general, I want everybody in our channel to have a voice and have more creative input, so that it's not me domineering, the content. And I figured, combined with the stuff I do for guitar.com, I can kind of just start my own channel. To be blunt too, monetization, extra stream of income.
Sure.
But really, that's it. It's just more so a test to see, like, one, things that I'm interested in, so that I can still have my own outlet and not feel like my voice isn't heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm domineering, and I'm the one dominating what's going on. But two, it's just like, for me, this is kind of going into like the TikTok era of things. So I know a lot of content creators, they have more long form content, which is fine. But I wanted to do something that's like, 5 to 10 minute videos, like quick in and out. And anything I want to experiment with, I can do that as well. And then, like, if brands hit me up specifically, not necessarily the channel, there's not that awkward, like, between the four of us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I have to imagine there's just with 4 people trying to do anything, in a band, a YouTube channel, whatever, there's just, oh no, I got to work that day, or I got to do, oh no, I'm over here visiting Mima, or like whatever the situation may be. It can just be more difficult to make schedules line up. And obviously, you guys have put in a ton of work collectively and a ton of work that's very focused, and you guys work well together. But
mhm.
I have to imagine, I mean, I guess not too unlike today. Like, you were free today. I imagine
Yeah, well,
some of them are not,
yeah,
type of thing.
yeah, kind of. It's just like today just lined up, but I mean, you're right on that. Like, typically our schedules line up, and funny enough, we're filming later today.
Nice.
Um, so, but typically our schedules line up, and we can do things and get things done in that sense. Uh, but even then, like, one, for a little bit, we're kind of getting overran with gear. I know that sounds like a problem, like, people are like, oh, that's not a problem, but like, when you have too much like, when you have too much to go through, and then with me, I'm like, I have to write about this, and I have to, it becomes like, hey, we have to do this. So the overflow can kind of seep into the solo channel a little bit, like if it's stuff that I'm working on, so it doesn't have to feel like, hey, like, you know for instance, we know, like, Xander's like more so the doom guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I want him to, like, if there's a pedal he's stoked about, I don't want it sitting in the background, be like, oh, we'll get to it eventually. He can do that, like, and so it's, and it does give us a bit more freedom, because Nelson and I are just doing the solo thing. He's the one editing it and whatnot. So it aligns a lot better, because I can just hit him up when I'm coming from work and just be like, hey, let's just shoot this. And usually, the shoots aren't that long. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, hey, here's this idea, here's how we're doing this, and just the execution.
Yeah, I feel that for sure. This is the year. I kept saying I don't really have a New Year's resolution, because I don't typically do that. I have goals sometimes, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's like, personal things or whatever. But this is the year, and I know I have to go out there and say it now. That way, all the listeners here heard me say it. That's what pushed me to, like, make a record. Like, this is the year that I actually do more YouTube. I added up all the videos. Not all of them, but I added up a lot of the videos that are here, that I have saved, and it's like 200 videos, because I have a
Jesus.
video for every podcast for the last couple years. For pretty much not every single episode, but most of them are done in this format, and I'm just like, I'm never gonna get through this by myself. I kept saying, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, like, get all these uploaded, and I'm never able to do it consistently. That's why there's maybe 20 or 30 podcast videos and 390 audio versions.
Oh, wow.
So, like, I uploaded some of ours from Gearfest, the first Gearfest we was at. I did upload some of those, but for the most part, yeah, I'm just like, every time I go and hang out with you guys, and especially like talking to Phil McKnight, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I am missing the boat here. I am doing this already. Is it going to be the most watched thing in the world? No, it's not. There's way crazier things out there that are going to drive, people are going to be attracted to. But I'm just like, this makes no sense. I really need to do it. So I'm in the process of trying to find an editor and just be like, listen, all of these are sitting in the can. As you get to them, like, I'll cut an intro and outro and send it to you. Get these out and like ready to go, because I'm not going to do it. I've proven that over the last couple of years. I'm obviously not going to do it. Yeah, I got one guy that I've worked with in the past that I'm going to talk to this week, and he was next on my list if that does not work out. So,
yeah, I mean, 2024 is the year. Like, it's funny you say that, because it's just like I noticed my workload just this year, just like 7-8 days into the year, and I'm just like, dang, this is really going to be the year, because I've got a lot going on. So,
yeah. So, when did you start doing? I feel like it's been semi-recent, but you're writing for Fretboard Journal. Other Jason is fantastic, and you're doing this guitar.com stuff. How did all of that come about? Because that wasn't a thing last time we recorded.
No, it wasn't. Funny enough, it started with guitar.com. My editor Josh, we were in the talking phase of like, he initially wanted TNI to like do their NAMM content or whatnot.
Okay.
But that didn't work out. And so, he and I were talking. He was like, "Oh, you seem like you're pretty good with like explaining things and whatnot. Have you thought about like writing reviews?" And I was like, "Well, I can try."
Sure.
I was like, other than the Yelp or Amazon review, like, it was like, unless you read those and you were impressed with that. But yeah, it started with that. I want to say the first major pedal was the Old Blood Noise Screen Violence. That was the first assignment that I had, and it's become a new passion of mine. I love writing, and it's just kind of, with guitar.com, it's just gear reviews. I am going to try to step out and do more interviews. I have a couple in mind. I just haven't landed them yet. And then with Fretboard Journal, it was just more so like, Jason really liked my writing, and it was last April for NAMM, like he had me write an article for that, and that kind of veered into that. And he wants me to come on more and do more stuff, and I would love to do more stuff. So we're trying to find the perfect balance. But like both of those companies, people are awesome, and like I am so grateful for them, because like they've given me the opportunity to find a new creative outlet that I love. Like, as much as I love filming, I do love the challenge of writing a review, especially given that, where millennials are now, I would say, who a lot of things are targeted for.
Sure.
So the fact that, like with guitar.com, if a lot of my reviews, I use a lot of millennial references, and I think that helps me stand out a bit more and have more people engaged. So it's kind of cool doing that. And inadvertently, I didn't realize, but until I was talking to Jason, that I'm one of the few people of color doing this. So that's
right.
another plus.
It's that is a big plus, because it gives you, you just have a unique perspective in a lot of ways that doesn't necessarily get reflected in quote unquote guitar journalism, so that does make a lot of sense, of course.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of cool, because it's just like, again, like, when I started doing it, I didn't think, I thought that like it would just be my friends and stuff that read the articles, and nobody like really would care. But I've had quite the positive response, and I've had like a lot of people approach me about some of the reviews and how much they enjoyed it. Like Sweetwater, I know Tyler, like he's like, "Dude, your writing is incredible," and I'm like, "Yeah, give me a job." Like,
Yeah,
give me a full-time position at Sweetwater.
Yeah. It's kind of writing. It's funny that you bring it, or that we're talking about it, because I feel like it's been an overlooked skill in some ways in the last, say 8-ish years. Things have really been focused on even just images. You hear people talk about being photographers or being especially video now. I mean, it sounds dumb to even say it, but video is king, obviously. But I feel like writing in general across not just guitar stuff, not just music stuff, but writing in general is having a bit of a resurgence as far as people's interest in it.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
My main reason for agreeing with that is because I think it's who's the audience. And like, I think the problem with writing more so, and this is just my perspective, it's like, who are you talking to? And like, do they get what you're going for? And
Mm-hmm.
are you talking to them in a language that they can connect with? Like, there are a couple magazines I read, or try to read, I should say, and you know, I can tell that I'm not the target demographic, and that's cool. So a lot of the things that I don't feel target me, obviously, not being the target demographic, but I feel like now myself and plenty of other people have become the target demographic. So the
Right.
lingo has changed. And a lot of like, even if you look at the marketing on a lot of these things, and just even on websites, the photos and um, like the bands that are being discussed and like the gear that's being discussed, or take another world, comics, like that has had a huge shift. And I think the writing has gotten better because there are people that are in our age group that are now writing comics, and some older Gen Xers, but they're presenting ideas that we probably thought of as kids, and it's become more interesting to read about.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's awesome. Like, a comic series that I've loved, and I know I'm veering off of music, but I think just because of the writing, was the Immortal Hulk,
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, take that and do a horror theme behind it, and it's just like, make it body horror, you know, and I think that was an idea that never was explored prior, but it's like, hey, our generation likes Cronenberg, so let's like take like The Fly and all these other things, and like all these references, and make that new again.
Mm-hmm. It's also just, I don't know if it's a demographic shift entirely, or if it's just people are a little overwhelmed with media in general. Everything's video, everything's flashing, everything's moving, everything's happening, and just being able to kind of chill and read something at your own pace without everybody else having to hear what you're, doing. I didn't really realize it until we're doing a big video push right now at Stringjoy, but we've also, over 2023, we did a lot of blogs just because we had somebody that wrote good blogs, and we were like, wow, we'll put them up there. Why not? And the response to those was always really, really strong. Never viral. It was never like the thing you would see reposted a million times, but the internal reviews and then the traffic that come later was really, really strong. And I started thinking, like, maybe this sounds really kind of weird to say, but are blogs coming back? Like, is that going to be a thing that people really enjoy again? Because that sounds very 2005. But
Get your Tumblr account ready.
yeah, exactly. I've seen people say like, "Oh, I miss Tumblr. We need to bring back Tumblr." I'm
Yeah.
like, is that nostalgia for a vintage internet, or is that just an overwhelm, or what is it? I don't know. Whatever it is, I share the desire. I'm not sure where it's coming from exactly, but I'm here for it.
I mean, the early 2000s has become popular again, so I think it's only natural that um, blogs will become a thing again. And I think it's also the personality behind the blogs and what attracts people to that. Because for me, and I say this, it's funny because I know he hasn't done it in a while, but like Mike Adams, anytime he wrote on the Mike and Mike blog, like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the right name, probably not, but but like one of the ones I always remember is just like his take on the American Professional One Jazz Master, and I that's to me, I was just like, man, this is interesting. And just in general, like with like Tumblr culture, I like that unlike Facebook, the scrolling that you saw was all creative in some way. So
Right.
whether it was a post where you got to see the thoughts behind this person, um, and I think blogs and blog sites are inherently less toxic. So um, I think they will become a thing with Gen Y. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is kind of reignited some stuff for me. I had a music project that I've been slowly working on over time. That's like it's way too ambitious for somebody that has like, not that it's the craziest thing ever, but it's just like this is way too much work for me who like sees a squirrel and gets distracted. But it's like combining music with a sci-fi story, and it kind of the spoken word lays over the top of the music, but you're supposed to be able to enjoy either without each other or combined together. And it's really fun, and I really enjoy doing it. But it involves a lot of writing, and writing was like one of my first passions. I thought when I was a kid, people would ask me what I was going to do, and I was going to be an author, and that never materialized for a variety of reasons. But now I'm like, well, why? I don't know. My sister's a relatively successful published or self-published author. It's like, maybe I need to revisit this writing bug, not just
You should.
songwriting, but
Like, dude, you totally should. Like, as far as music goes, I don't think in the era now that we're in, I don't think anything is too ambitious. I think something like that, especially done right, would be the next big thing, and it would be the breath of fresh air that I think creatively is lacking somewhat in. I'm not going to say lacking in music, but it would be a thing that would definitely bring something new to the table.
mm-hmm.
Because I look at things like the last big band that broke out, Sleep Token.
Yep.
They're completely different from what's going on, and they combine elements of what's going on, and it's the mystique behind them that's so alluring. And if you look before that, bands. I think we're in the age of. Actually, no, I know what I'm trying to say now.
All right.
I think we're in the age of connected universes. So everything like is connected. So, hey, this album has this story behind it. But if I read this book behind it, it segues. So everything is connected in that sense. And I think we as a culture now have become so used to that because of the MCU and things like that, that yeah, like everything is connected. Like the fact that in proof of that, the fact that we're seeing like I hate to use comics again, but I'm a
No,
nerd.
keep doing it. I'm for it.
Like the fact that Michael Keaton's Batman just popped up in an issue of Batman, referencing the fact that he can't turn his neck. Like, it's connected. Like
Mhm.
it's all connected. And I always thought like with Coheed and Cambria, that's what made them appealing. Is just like you have the comic behind it, and I'm surprised that Gerard Way never tied the Umbrella Academy into My Chem.
Mm-hmm. It does seem like they vibe together. It's not like it's such a separate. It doesn't feel. Maybe that's because I'm a My Chem fan and a Umbrella Academy fan, so that could be why. But they don't feel as separate as maybe he intends them to be, and that could just be because when you create things, you tend to put out a certain vibe, and that's just comes across no matter what you're making. So maybe it's not intentional, but to me, I'm like, these worlds, like the Black Parade world and the Umbrella Academy world, could totally be a thing.
Yeah,
like 100%.
It could be its own shared universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it fun, and it makes it feels. The reason I started thinking about it in the first place was like, honestly, I was listening to like a lot of too much maybe Tom Waits, and it's just like listening to, he has all these fragmented songs that are that have spoken word elements to them. Some of his biggest songs are that way, but they exist only in that 3 to 5 minute chunk. And every time I would finish one, I'm like, I want more. What else is going on here? Well, there's definitely more to that story, and I know that's the intention behind it, but still it left me wanting a long form version. Now, I'm obsessed with long form, like spoken word stuff. Obviously, that's why I do a podcast. I like that format. But I thought trying to do that in an expanded way with this own little weird post-apocalyptic thing that I've always been sitting on. I was like, maybe this is where this needs to live. I thought it was going to be a comic, and I guess it could be that too. But things that are within my ability to get done with my own two hands, that's probably not going to happen unless I have done a comic before. I don't know if I ever shared that with you. That's kind of weird.
Did we ever be stoked? No, I didn't.
Oh man, yeah, I got a mini comic that was supposed to go along with a pedal release that never happened, and I wrote it. I think in 2019, I believe.
I didn't know you then.
Okay, but I can't remember because it never really came out. I put it out so my patrons could read it. Maybe 2 years later when it became kind of obvious that it wasn't coming out. Mm-hmm. But I did it with a local artist named Ethan Slayton. And it's short. It's like, I don't know, 8-10 pages or something like that. But it's a time travel concept. And I'm going to have to send it to you.
Yeah, dude, send it to me.
Yeah. It feels weird that we haven't talked about that yet.
Me being a huge sci-fi nerd, send that to me.
Yeah. He did such a good job on the art. The art's so cool. It's kind of like, I asked him to try to do like a hybridization of like Frank Miller stuff mixed with Batman the Animated Series, but so it's black and white and kind of choppy like that, but still has some of these gothic vibes. He did such a good job, and it's so outside of what he normally does. I was like, man, he killed it, and I need to get it out in the world probably at some point.
Totally random, and I have to ask if you've seen this because you brought that up. Have you seen the Batman the Animated Series episode or the new Batman Adventures, whichever one it falls under, the episode Legends of the Dark Knight, where they did Frank Miller's Batman, and they had Michael Ironside voicing Batman?
No.
Dude, it's a segment of these kids telling stories about, Batman, because he's this urban legend. Mm-hmm. And you have one from the like 50s with this campy, or 50s 60s campy Batman. And then you have Frank Miller's take, and it's like, I'm like I saw, that's one of my favorite episodes to this day.
Dude, I gotta watch that. I had no idea. No, I definitely gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's really good because it's just like, you still have the silliness, like, of the Adam West era, and like, that telling, and there is a Joel Schumacher dig. So
the back card. Yeah.
Yes. It's really good.
Nice. I'll definitely have to check that out. That sounds like all kinds of my business. I love the Frank Miller Dark Knight. I know some people don't, but I absolutely love it. But I like Frank Miller in general. So
yeah, I actually like his RoboCop concept, like his sequel idea to RoboCop, and I mean, it's RoboCop. It's more RoboCop than we've gotten since the first RoboCop movie. And I was just like, I know a lot of people are like, well, Frank Miller's stuff, some of his stuff can't work on film. And I'm like, the sequel ideas he had to RoboCop could, because I was like, it's pretty damn brutal.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's just like, like I don't care what anybody says. I know he gets a lot of hate for it. I know it's not the popular opinion, but I personally love Ben Affleck's Batman because it's more Jim Lee and Frank Miller. Mm-hmm. And like, I was like, and that's the only Batman I've seen on film that I'm scared. Like, I would actually be scared of, especially in that fight scene. Like, because it's like, oh, so he's going to brand you. So when you go to jail, I mean, you're screwed out of the way. Like I was like, so that's just my Batman tangent. Like, I actually liked his Bruce Wayne being like slightly unhinged, and it's like, yeah, he's older, and it's like, I'm kind of glad they didn't do the whole like show us Robin or which Robin it was, because it kind of adds to the allure of that. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I understand the DCEU was not the thing, and I will say another unpopular opinion, outside of the hands of Zack Snyder, I didn't like that Batman as much in Suicide Squad, in the Flash movie. Oh God. That horrible suit. I was like, at least we got Michael Keaton. And I was like, oh, yeah. But it's like Ben Affleck's Batman in that horrible suit and just that comedy. Like, it's like, dude, he's not Tony Stark. He's not going to be like one-liners. Like, this man is unhinged. Like, that's the version you gave us. Keep that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually really liked Affleck, too. I liked Affleck as Batman. And I liked his portrayal of Batman. I had issues with the universe in general. But not him, really. I liked that he was a bigger, like bulkier Batman. You know, like he'd been lifting and eating.
Yeah, that's a Batman you would see it like that. But that's the thing, though. It's like the joke that me and my friends would make. I was like, so if you put all those Batmans in a room together and they fought, you really think Keaton or Affleck? I mean, Keaton or Bale are going to top Affleck? Like, he's going to beat the hell out of them.
That's right. And he looks more upset.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Christian Bale as Batman. Those are some of my favorite movies of all time. But yeah, which one's scarier out of all of the live action Batman portrayals that we've gotten to see? Just based on who's standing there, who's the scariest? It's got to be Affleck.
The Affleck, like that's like he's the scare. Like, I know Robert Pattinson's Batman. Like, I don't hate him. I know there was a lot. Like, I just wish, and I feel like an elder emo for saying this. I just wish he wasn't so emo. Like, I like his portrayal and I like the detective skills
and the movie overall was really good.
No, it was a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess like the shift in focus on that, and after coming like more so from the like Zack Snyder, I'm going to beat you to death Batman. I was like, man, if we can find the middle ground between those two, that would be the perfect Batman.
Yeah, and maybe it's just because I knew it was Pattinson, and he's, I still have like a hangover from Twilight. Even though I never even watched those movies, I just can see. I loved those movies, or the Batman movie that we got. I really, really did. But I was like, similarly, like, he's not quite scary enough. His demeanor was right and everything, but like his vibe was not as scary as I want Batman to be. I want Batman to freak me out. That's what I want. But
I mean, that's the thing. I think the big thing, and this is what I also say for Spider-Man. There has to be a clear difference between the Bruce Wayne persona and the Batman persona. And I feel the only major criticism I have for the Batman was I don't think there was that difference.
No.
And it's just like, I think anybody in Gotham, like, you'd be pretty dumb to be like, oh yeah, it's Bruce. It's not Bruce Wayne. Like, you see him walking around Scott, like, pissed off all the time, like he's about to snap. And then you're just like, oh yeah, then there's Batman. Like, oh yeah, it's the most obvious.
It really looks like he's still got his eye makeup on.
Yeah, he's still got his eye makeup. He looks so pissed. Like, what's wrong with Bruce Wayne?
He looks so mad he might dress up in a rubber suit and beat up criminals. Wait a minute.
Like, but yeah, so yeah, that's my comic rant. Had to get that out since we were on the subject.
Oh, of course.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. Well, I mean, sort of still on this subject, though, because I know that's a big passion. You and I have a lot of overlapping interests. Obviously, it comes out every time we hang out. But do you ever get to, I mean, you do in the YouTube channel, I've seen that, but in your music, when you're just making music to make music, you're not reviewing gear, you're not doing nothing else, you're just like, I want to create these tunes. Do you ever get to integrate those type of loves, or is it more of kind of a introspective and life thing that you draw from?
It's a mix of both, to be honest with you. So right now, the band I'm in, Young Mountain, I've kind of had the next, I feel like the, what's his, I can't, over the MCU. Kevin Feige.
Yes.
I feel like that with the band, because I've kind of already planned out the next 2 years. And with the next record, I've had a theme, and it is somewhat real life, but I kind of want to do a thing behind it, like to tie the record together, because I always love that when it's more than, like, I love when Radiohead ties stuff together and it's still personal. Or I love when bands do that and it's not just like, hey, here's this record with a bunch of songs that are kind of unconnected, like subject wise. Not saying that's a bad thing, but I appreciate it more when bands do that. So for me in the creative process, I try to, as much as possible, because, being that I'm not the vocalist, and I want them to have as much free reign as possible. I'll just tell them, like, hey, here's the concept that I have. Here's what I feel like this should be about. You can say whatever, but this is, within that story, because for me, whether it's good or bad or it sucks or not, like, I still think that makes music a little bit cooler, and there's a bit more thought behind it, and there's a bit more meaning behind it. It doesn't have to be that way with every artist. But I do like for instance, I like the fact that the first 3 Eminem major label albums, like, they're a trilogy. And like even with the naming scheme, you can tell it's a trilogy, and they're meant, I'm not going to say they're meant to, but they can be enjoyed as a trilogy. And and I've always adored, like, the Smashing Pumpkins, who clearly, well, I'm not going to say always, but in the term adore pun, but I've I like the fact that, like, all their music videos ties to the album visually, and like there is a story there, or there could be a story there. And and I say that knowing that I'm not a big fan of the recent Pumpkins album Autumn, and I know that's a concept album, and so on paper I should be, but I'm not.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But like with Melancholy and like Machina, and just all the visuals tied, and there's a story, and I think that makes it more engaging, and that makes it's kind of cool being able to implement that. Like, me personally, I try to implement it as much as possible, depending on what's going on. But the records do, for at least for or the songs in general, like the ones that I have a bit more control in, as far as like the creative output, they do tend to be a bit more introspective to us. But I still try to have that air of like, hey, this is, I want the visuals to tie into this. And admittedly, with the first Young Mountain EP, I don't think I did that very well. But it was funny because the first solo EP that I did as with electronic music, I kind of made it as a follow-up to that record. in terms of theme, but I don't think it was executed well enough to where you could catch that, even though it was a different genre.
Mm-hmm.
But I think going forward, I like doing that, and I think exploring that creative side on both ends. And I've toyed with the idea like maybe I should write a little story blog post, explaining, or a little story to go along with the next record. Doesn't have to be anything like super like 100-page book, but just something that is just like, hey, here's a story. Not saying necessarily the record was informed by this, because I still want people to be able to like relate to it. But this is a story that, for me, helped me like kind of explain things on my ends without like dropping real life names of the people
Sure.
that this is about.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because I feel like I have a hard time. At least now, it didn't used to be this way, but a little bit of a hard time creating music that doesn't have some sort of story component. And it wasn't as intentional as what I was describing earlier, but like the last record I did has a story that there's not really any word. I mean, there's some like field recorded words and things on it. That's how the record got its name. But like, there's a whole story to what's happening. And I've said that publicly a few times. And one person has actually reached out and was like, here's what I feel like is happening. And they were like so close, like 90%. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't tell them at the time, and I haven't said who that person is yet, because I'm not sure if I'll ever actually let the story out, because I like that I know it, and I like that it means different things to different people, but there is actually like an intentional thing that is happening with the character in this story. And the fact that somebody was able to tell at all, because there's nothing that like lays out, and this happened, and this happened, and then this happened. They just had to listen to it all and get the vibe that they got from it. And the fact that they followed so closely with my original idea was kind of shocking to me.
But to your credit on that, like it proves what something I said a while ago, and it sounded kind of cocky, and I hate that it sounded that way, but I said that storytelling in any medium is the greatest gift that humanity has, because we share stories, and by sharing our stories, we share our histories, our visions, our thoughts. Like we share us, and it's just like to be able to put that in music, and someone get as close as they did, like to nailing that idea, like that, it's just like they interpreted your idea and it's get as close. That's impressive, and that's awesome. Like
it tells me they spent a lot of time with it too.
Exactly. And that's what I love. It's just like, because again, we live in a TikTok age, so every content is immediately disposable. Like, you have a shelf life, but when you create something that has meaning and there's a story behind it, you're invested into it. And I still think there are people that want that. Like, and I don't think it's just like older people. I think younger people too. It's just like if you give them something with meaning, like, and something with, I don't want to say depth, but with a story that they can connect to and like figure out on their own. Because I've always said that people aren't dumb, so we don't need to be force-fed, like, plot expositions and stuff like that. If you give them enough, they can put the pieces together. But the fun thing about that, especially in your case, is like having someone put the pieces together and get really close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe there have been other people who have. If you have, reach out. I'm easy to get a hold of, or at least tell me what you think, because it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, because that's part of why I haven't put it out there. It's what does it mean to you? It's
exactly.
And maybe I will. I'm not saying I never ever will, because I think that could also have some merit and some fun. But I do like leaving it up to interpretation, especially when it's 99% instrumental. So it's just like, let's let it ride and see what happens. I'm not saying I never will, but as of right now, I'm still not going to. So we'll see where it goes.
You should at some point. You should. I think you should.
It'd be really easy. It'd be a short, like, it'd be a relatively short story, you know, couple pages probably could wrap it up pretty succinctly and nicely. I guess you might want to be, or I might want to be a little bit nicer with the language than a Wikipedia summary, but but yeah, it's fun to, I feel like I had this mindset, especially when I was younger, that doing all these things that we've both gotten to do over the years was for other people. It was like, no, I'm a listener. I play covers and like do things like that, and I enjoy music, but I didn't feel like I had permission to participate for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just dumb. Nobody, especially this day and age, you sign up for DistroKid, you know, you pay $20 and you can put up as much as you want, you know, for anyone to listen to. The gatekeepers really are gone in that sense. Now, they're not gone in all senses, but they're gone in the sense that you can get things out where people can hear them. And I think that's probably the best thing about living right now, honestly, as a creative person.
No, I agree. I was going to say this and add to that. So I've been a part, like the music scene that we're associated with. I've been a part of a few notable bands in that scene. And the thing is, I always felt like I was pushing someone else's creativity, and I didn't have an outlet for myself. And it's like now, in this age of DistroKid and everything, literally the internet has changed to where you can get your own creative voice out there and no one can stop you. And the beauty of it is you don't know what's going to be the next big thing about it. Like if you go in and you create something because you love it, you'll be rewarded for that. But if you go in looking for the reward, I don't think you will feel as rewarded if there is a reward, because it's just like you went in expecting this. So I think now for like creators, you can go in and do whatever you want. The gatekeeping is gone. Like you never know who's going to be what. And I love that we're in that era, because now it means you can't tell anyone that they're not talented because they don't fit this formula, because that person can go and release a song on SoundCloud and, be the next Post Malone. Like you don't know. And it's just like, or that person can get like a super low, inexpensive deal at Netflix. And then we have the Squid Games.
Right.
Like, so it's just like, you don't know. And while I would say the people that do the gatekeeping have their tried and trues, if you will, that they can always fall back on. Like, I think it's great that we live in the era that like literally anybody, I mean, could be the next big thing, or just go viral off of one thing. And like, I personally think that's great, because for me now, it's just, I think the more or the less gatekeeping we have, the more creativity that we have, and the more that, the more content that is out there. Because don't get me wrong, I do think there is a bit of oversaturation.
Sure.
But I love the originality behind things. Like, it's funny because like when I was in Slaves, not as an actual slave from the 1800s, the band.
I guess, yeah. Not everybody who listens to this knows what you're talking about. So
yeah.
Yes. The band.
The band. I remember like saying to the guys, I was like, hey guys, like Johnny Craig, the vocalist, I was like, he's never sung over anything like Thrice or like, like not necessarily like different, like even indie or what. And I was like, dude, if you guys go in that direction, you'd be huge. And of course they didn't listen to me. Sure. And I'm just like, but there are other examples to that. Like I was like, if you combine the heavy stuff with like this stuff, and another perfect example, Sleep Token. Like,
right.
And it's just like, or like I remember in some bands I was like, hey man, like Deftones is it. Like if you combine like the heavy shoegaze aspect with like more, like if you take the Deftones influence and increase the shoegaze and like or you mix it up. However, we end up with Loathe, and I'm
Mhm.
like, these are some of the biggest bands out right now. I don't want to say biggest; they're some of the most relevant bands out right now.
Well, they're certainly able to, and this is like an accomplishment in and of itself, in my opinion. They're certainly able to stand on their own feet as entities and support themselves. I don't know what it looks like behind the scenes at any of those places, right?
Mhm.
But I think it's probably fairly safe to say that Sleep Token can pay their bills.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's pretty. I don't think we're stretching too far to say that. And I think that I've said this on the podcast a few times. Some people will argue with it, but it's always been hard to support yourself as an artist. It's always been difficult. Whether you're going back to the 1800s, the 1700s, you had to rely on, like, most of those people who really had a passion for sculpting or playing lutes or whatever they really like to do. Most of them did not support themselves by that. And if they did, it was because some rich guy really liked them, or multiple rich people really liked them, and they were able to get popular that way. Still, like, tiny fraction of people who were able to create full time from
But
their art. And that's the same now.
Yeah, no, that's especially in YouTube. Like, if all the people in our community had to solely survive just off of YouTube revenue, there would be no channels.
Right.
Like, they would like I think that's the thing people don't realize. It's just like you said, artists make very little to no money.
On the whole.
Yeah, on the whole.
Yeah.
And it sucks because you're starting to see how that's become more commonplace, and you're starting to see bands charging more for merch, and you're starting to see like things like that because there's no money to be made, and it's just like, unless you are at the very, very top, like, or like you're breaking through at that top, like it's very hard because especially in anything creative, like there aren't as many, not all. I'm not going to say that because I don't want to discourage people, but there's only one Taylor Swift. There's only one Kanye. There's only one like Drake. There's only one of these big artists. And one of the rules that I've always lived by is you're never going to be bigger than the artist you're compared to.
Right. You've said that a bunch of times to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's and to me that still holds true, but I think that's why that pushes innovation and originality. But it sucks because despite that, you can blow up, and like a lot of the people in our community and a lot of the people in the YouTube community and a lot of people we're going to see it now, like, we know how much they solely make off of YouTube. And if they had to live off of that, there's no way.
They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And it's not that they necessarily start doing the channel or the music project or insert thing here with the intent that this is going to for sure be the thing that I get to do. Even for those that have substantial channels that do generate a fair bit of revenue off of just the YouTube, views, most of those people still do other things.
Yeah.
It's hard to think of anybody. I can't. Rhett Scholl still does other things.
Oh, no, I know. I know. Like,
and he's very popular and very successful on the platform, and he's killing it and doing a great job. He still does other stuff. And I don't think people realize that.
I mean, you look at Rick Beato, and he's blown up. He's like 3 million plus subs, but he has a deal with Gibson. He makes money, he makes money outside of that. He makes money outside of YouTube because of YouTube.
Yes.
And it's just like, but that's not all of us. He's the exception, not the rule.
Also, Rick Beato had a huge career playing in bands and producing records way before he even knew about YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, he had a huge, massive career before that. Long before he was a household name in our circles the way he is now. He was out there making records for a living. forever.
And he was doing it at a time when it was profitable.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, almost there's very few people in the music world, in any creative world, that solely do one thing. It does happen. It's not like it's impossible, but everybody I know does lots of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but that's like why I write for two different, publications while doing two different YouTube channels, while working at a big box, at this point, Guitar Center. Like,
I think people have figured it out.
Yeah, people have figured it out.
They've seen the carpet in your post.
Yeah, they see, they know. Like, no one, and even then, with all of that, I barely get by. Barely. Like, it's, don't get me wrong. Like, I think the goal for everybody, every creative, is to be as big as possible without compromising their creative integrity. But we know going into it that the likelihood of that happening, either as part of it, isn't as big as we think. And so you really have to pursue any creative passion knowing that, hey, this might not pay, more than likely this isn't going to pay the bills, but I'm doing it because I love it.
Yes. I mean, to drive that point home further, I'm not going to name any names because I'm not sure that they want this out there, but bands that I've had the opportunity to interview on this show, who you would think that was it. You would really think that that's the only thing they do. We're getting done. I'm like, yeah, so what do you do when you're not, you're kind of in a break time. You're not writing, you're not recording, you're not touring. What do you do? He's like, oh, I work at a cabinet shop. Like, what? He's like, oh, I really like it, and I got to pay the bills somehow. I'm like, whoa. Like, even though I know all these things and I've talked to enough people that I should know better at this point, I was still like, even you are working at a cabinet shop. He could probably work anywhere. I'm sure he's doing it largely to fill his time, but he chooses to work in a cabinet. And you know what? I used to work in a cabinet shop and I didn't enjoy it. So more power to him. But
well, I can, I can say this because I've worked for them. Take Woe Is Me. They've gotten back together, and on paper, it's funny because a lot of people were like, "Oh man, they must be making bank," especially looking at the amount of streams and whatnot, and like the things that they're playing, and it's just like, no, when you factor in all the costs and everything, like, no, they're not making bank. Like, they would have to do that, what they're doing now, on a level, like, to be self-sufficient entirely and to be self-sufficient and profitable, they would have to do that on a level that's like bigger than they had in the past. And that's kind of scary to think about because it's just like, I always hate looking at it like this, especially, but it is the reality of it in the music industry. The band or the artist gets paid last.
Yes.
And, but you're the one that's dependent on the most for your art. And it sucks because it's just like, I personally think as much as people want to do it as a career, and they're in a far easier position if they wanted to, like, do this full time, they're in a much easier position to make it a career and be profitable than, myself or people that are just like up and coming, like, and that's the thing. They're established and they can do that. However, not every other punk band is going to be like Turnstile. Like, like they're the exception, not the rule. And it's just one of those things of like, it's cool to see a band as passionate as they are and original as they are just blow up and succeed. Like, I root for those bands. Like, I don't give. I want every band to be as successful as possible because it's hard out there.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and gatekeep and just be like, oh, they blew up, I don't like them anymore. Like, no. Like, if you do what you do, if you can make money being creative, do it. Cause like everything else sucks.
Right.
And that's the truth. Unless you have like like even think about it, like being a teacher, that's minimum such states $30K a year. And that's not a lot of money, but you're in this important position to influence minds. And, you're probably teaching the next Michael Jackson, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, but everything else, like outside of creativity, does not pay as much, or no, that they do, but it sucks.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. It's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblinssaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock NBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media podcast network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others, photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.
You don't get to express yourself.
It's one of those things where I've talked about this a lot. Not everybody's wired maybe the way you and I are, where it's like, I have to do this stuff. Even if I never make any money off of it, I have to do some of this stuff just to get it out of my system. I got to get these things out. Whether anyone ever hears them or not is irrelevant. It's like, I got to do some level of this. And there are a lot of people who don't understand that, and they don't have that drive. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are the type of people who would hear us talk in the way that we're talking now and be like, what do you mean everything else sucks? Like, I like my job. Like I know a lot of people that like their job. If I was in their job, I would not like it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's more of a me problem than anything else. Like,
yeah,
really.
No, and that's the thing. Like I guess, oh man, I hope that's not a viral thing to say that. but what I mean by that is just like, I'm coming from the perspective as a creative.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you, depending on the band, like, I'm not going to say, I don't want to speak for all people, but anyone that's like been somewhat successful in music, they can tell you going from that, depending on their reason, to like working a retail job, it's probably not the most ideal thing. Like, something you don't really, aspire to do. But
it messes with your brain to go from even call it 20 people, but let alone 1,500 plus people stoked that you're there, so much so that you walk out on stage and they're going, oh yeah, this person's here that I want to see. I've been waiting to see this person for 5 years. I drove 4 hours to see this person. The feeling that causes most people who are on the receiving end of that versus, hey, hurry up and fold those shirts. It's pretty drastic.
Yep. Yep. Like,
and a lot of people experience that duality. A lot of people.
Dude, okay, so a lot of my friends are in successful touring bands. And like, I'll go to their show and hang out with them, and I'll just sit there like, damn, this is awesome. Then I'll go to work the next day and I'm just like, cool. So this person is cussing at me because they can't figure out how to make this interface work. Right. Like, wow, this is something I could have done had I been better and, applied myself more. Or it's just like, going to work and it's just like this person not as informed about something, trying to tell me something that they don't know about. And then they bring up another YouTuber who I know agrees with me.
Right.
Because they are saying the same thing that I'm saying. So it's just like, it messes with your head. And it's just like, dude, like, okay, cool. Like, it's the fact that the appreciation, I'm not going to say I'm not going to say the stardom of it, but the appreciation, because you go in and people, appreciate the art. They appreciate the songs. Like, they mean something to you, and in certain ways you're validated by that because it gives you meaning. And, I think that's important. But then to be, brought back down to that, like, that people, because I don't think a lot of people realize that people that work on the front lines in a lot of retail or fast food jobs are like treated less than human. So to go from like, hey, I'm feeling validated, people care about my art, they care about me. Then the next day to go to like, oh, I'm being cussed out because I forgot to take off the pickles on your sandwich. Like, that's a pretty huge extreme. And, that messes with people's mental health. Mm-hmm. And, as a creative, if you've ever experienced that, it's kind of hard to like give that up. For most reasons. There are some reasons, like some people just want a quiet life with their family and they can just do whatever and they have the money to do that.
Right.
That's cool. But I personally think, like, for me, I totally get it. Like, I understand why creatives are as depressed as they are, because it's just like, dude, like, to have your work validated and then to have you validated, then to go and, be treated less than human. Like, because that's most jobs, like most jobs dealing with people. I don't think people understand that, like, because the way that our culture is, we want the immediacy of it. We want things now and we want answers now. We want this, most service jobs, that's how it is. So it's just like, it sucks because it's just like that's an extreme that a lot of people that aren't creatives don't realize.
Mm-hmm. And it just happens to be that creatives tend to exist in both those spheres in a way that most people don't. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people working retail and customer interfacing jobs that also have the same wiring as you and I and want to go play shows and want to record music all the time. Mm-hmm. It's a little more rare, I think, to have in other, spaces to have that occur. Usually, I'm not saying this is an improvement, but like, if usually you get into a career and that's your reality that you exist in until you quit and change careers or retire or whatever ends up happening. That's the only real reality you experience, is like basically work life, home life. And it's all kind of not that extreme, a swing. versus versus what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And like to add to that, like, but once you've experienced I don't want to say, I'm going to use the term freedom. Once you experience the creative freedom to do that, and then to realize that, hey, this could be a career for a little bit, and then to realize that, hey, this could be a career longer than that but to realize that anything can derail that, and then to go back from that to like, being, and I'm not even saying, I want people to worship me, because that's not the case. I'm saying, as a person who often does not feel appreciated, and who deals with mental health issues, it's nice that someone says to you, hey, I enjoyed your song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to know, like, hey, my creativity has led me to a career that I enjoy. And then to have that taken away or lose that, and then have to deal with the reality of your life, like, what am I without that creative outlet? That's not an easy task to handle. And like, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, that's how creatives are. Some people will always be creating. Like me, I will always create. And I've learned personally, I just create for myself, because like you said earlier, we just do it because that's what we do, and it's for our sanity. Like, if I didn't have a creative outlet, I would go crazy.
I don't want to think about it.
Yeah. So it's just like, but there are people like, where it's just like, there are a lot of people who I feel like needs that validation, because, without it, they probably feel like they don't have much to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's, to see the people, and that's why I root for people to succeed, because I know how it feels to be the person that, like, was told, oh, you're not going to be successful. Oh, you're not going to be anything, like, creatively, or this, and you should give this up. You should do that. Like, I know I was that person. So any success that I had felt good, because it made me realize that, hey, these people were wrong, and that maybe, I can do something with this. So for me, it's just like, even now with YouTube, like, anytime someone leaves a comment that's super positive, it like changes my outlook in a very positive way. It's not in an egotistical, self-serving way. It's just more so like, hey, I'm making a difference in somebody's life, or I made a difference in somebody's, buying decision or whatever. And to me, that's cool, because it's like, I realize that there are a lot of people like me who don't have someone to relate to, and being able to offer that to someone, whether in any creative format, is what the world needs.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about rooting for people to succeed a couple times. I just saw this the other day. Oh man, I love the guy's videos. His name's escaping me right now. I know he listens to this show, so it's gonna bother me. Jesse Barden or Jesse Bar. I'm sorry, Jesse. I can't remember.
I think I know who you're talking
where
about.
He'll be like, I'm telling my kids about this band, and he'll like do the thing. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, man. I really do apologize. I love his videos, but he did one on Lorna Shore, and I've talked about Lorna Shore a lot on this, because to me, that band is like the epitome of just constantly doing the thing, right? They've had some different iterations, and they've had some ups and downs over the years, but they just always did brutal deathcore music. That's what they've always done.
You know what you're getting with them.
And now they're huge in a genre that I didn't even know could get huge. Like, we saw some of the things with like Bring Me the Horizon, but Bring Me the Horizon had a gradual genre shift, if we're being totally honest, which is fine. Cool. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but like, that doesn't matter. Not everything's for everybody. I wish them all the success. They deserve it. But Lorna Shore, at least currently, still sounds like someone's being murdered. And somehow is massive, is like absolutely huge. And a lot of that's due to, Will's, presence and talent as a vocalist. And that's not for everybody. That music is not for everybody. Still, people in that scene will be like, oh, boo, Lorna Shore, like crabs pulling each other back down into the pot.
Oh yeah, it's crabs in a barrel.
I'm just like, well, why? What did they do? Oh, did they? It's like the comment I left on it was like, oh, I'm sorry. The scene on which I base my entire personality is finally getting discovered by people other than my immediate circle. Better hate on the biggest band in the scene now for no reason. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like people want to keep things to themselves, and I think it makes it feel more personal to them. They don't like to see. I think a lot of people, especially in that music scene, don't like to see other people succeed, which is weird to me because an elder emo moment like Thursday when they blew up. I remember so many people getting like pissy that they had strayed from the post-hardcore like indie path, and I'm like, dude, if they can make money doing this, can do it. Like I was if
they like, as long as they still genuinely like what they're doing, who cares?
Yeah. Like, and that's the thing for me. It's just like, especially in the YouTube community, like, obviously I'm not accounting for like political and social beliefs, but I genuinely want to see everyone succeed because it's just like, dude, like we're all out here doing this. It's not easy. It's not easy. Like, it's not easy at all. Some people are probably like, oh yeah, I just need to get to a certain amount of likes. There are channels right now that have been around for 5 years that have less than 1,000 followers. Like, it's not easy. But I want to see people succeed because I know, like, one, how genuinely happy a lot of people are doing this. Like, they love doing this, and it's, I don't want to say it's become their personality, but it's become their life. And, so why wouldn't you want your friends to succeed? Like I and that's the thing, like, I will say this personally, that scene that music scene, like the Warped Tour, all that, I wanted to separate myself as much as possible from it because of that crab in a barrel mentality. Like, obviously other things, like other things that have been, but I didn't like being a part of that. I detested that even when I was in those bands around that time. And, I always tried to be friends with everybody and I always tried to root everybody on. Like, the one thing, I'll make fun of like Nickelback, but I know they're successful. Like, I'm not going to sit here and like,
Chad's not losing any sleep over.
Yeah, he's not like, but I would never, the one thing I tried to do is I would never say a band sucks. Because I think you never know who's going to be at what level. And with that said,
I'm super guilty of doing that on this podcast, by the way.
No, I try to refrain from that because it's like, one, like, I don't know their circumstances. Like, I don't necessarily know if they're a person, but I would like to see people succeed creatively because that's an avenue that's become so hard to succeed in. And, especially for me, I want to see my friends succeed. Like, I'm not going to be that dude that's like crab in a barrel. Like, if you're given every opportunity, one, like, it's not even self-serving. It's just like, I think the more people that succeed doing this makes it better for all of us, because then that shows that, each of us can do it. And that motivates everybody else.
Yeah, no, I would rather be the crab, like, pushing upwards. Like, go, buddy. Get out.
Yeah.
Get out. And maybe
get out of here. Get out of
here. Take me with you when you can. That's it's just a weird mentality to not want people specifically in your scene or in your community to not do well. Why do you want them to not do well? Just because you're not doing as well as you think you should be doing? Is that the thing? But what does their success have to do with you? Nothing.
That's nothing. like, dude, like, and that's the thing that, admittedly, I don't want to say I get envious of some of my friends that have seen success, because I think I know how hard they've worked for it. And, I always have to tell myself, if I want to be that successful, I have to put in that much work or more. So, it's I don't think I can understand being like, oh man, like, they're huge. I wish I could do that. But then there's the realization that you can. And it's just, you have to go in knowing that it might not be guaranteed and you have to put in a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And it's just like, people, and now I'm sure, use the old term like are haters, because it's just like, they don't want to see you succeed being successful because they're not successful. And to me, that's just disgusting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like we should be encouraged as a creative. We should be encouraging everyone, whether it's our cup of tea or not, like whether their thing is for me or not. Like, again, actually to tie that back, one of the things I've tried to say with bands, rather than like try not to say they suck, but I just leave it at they're not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'll work on that. I got to work on that. There's definitely recorded audio in public of me really ranting about things, but I still don't want them to not do well, even if I don't like it. Like it doesn't have anything to do with me. And then I should reflect back on this a little bit, not reflect back, but make mention of this also applies in business. A lot of gear company owners listen to this show, a lot more than I would have expected. But like, I guess it makes sense considering the genre of the podcast or whatever. Mm-hmm. All this still applies. In my experience, Scott and I were still doing lots and lots of client work on the side until 2020. That's when I say Scott. Most people probably know I'm talking about Stringjoy. We literally like invested everything in it, and the company had been around since 2014. It wasn't until 2020 when the side work slowed down, mostly for him. I still do a little bit of it, but like that's a long time. This is November of this year. We'll be in business 10 years, and it's still, people are like, who? It's one of those things. You got to keep at it, no matter what the endeavor is. If you're starting from zero and trying to get to, this is my thing, it's probably going to take you a decade, at least, if not longer, to get where you're trying to go. Of consistent work, too. Consistent output, consistent effort. Nobody likes to hear that. Yeah. But all the best new artists, the quote-unquote best new artists that get voted for in the Grammys or insert award show here, almost every time, like, I know that person's been doing this over a decade. How are they a new artist? What do you mean best new artist?
No, exactly. That's the thing. It's like old is new. Mm-hmm. Old is like, and that's the one thing I will say that, especially with companies, like, I try to stay away from any negativity, like whether I agree with the company or not. I try like, I will not talk them. Like, as a company, like if I don't like your product, that's one thing, but I know how hard it is for like me, you, everybody else to do this. Like, so what's the point of me, trying to talk someone else and bring them down when it's just like, hey, like, I know what they're trying to do. Like, just because I don't like one of their things doesn't, again, it's not for me. Like, and admittedly, I will say there was one video recently where I almost said it, and I kind of regret not saying, is like, I didn't like this because I don't think it works for me. And I think we as people would do a lot better doing that, because because there's the thing, a lot of people put a lot of hours into that, and especially like with a lot of these smaller pedal companies, like, there's a lot of like research and development, and it's just like, it doesn't mean that it sucks, because it doesn't. Like, there's a bunch of pedals that I've played and I'm just like, okay, this is awesome, but I don't really use phasers. So, it's like, so I can appreciate the effort and the work behind it, but I'm not a person that uses phasers. So, like reverb, whole different story. Love reverb pedals, but
all the reverb,
all the reverb. Like, but again, but at the same time, the reason I got into YouTube, like for instance, again, was to see more people like myself doing this, because again, one of the examples I always give It's like, I didn't want, it kind of didn't make sense to me seeing like a blues lawyer demo like the Walrus Audio R1, and like they're playing like blues licks on the slower or the R1, like some of these super ambient pedals. And, I was like, and then seeing them kind of like trying to figure it out. And it's like, dude, no, it's awesome. It's just that's not for you. And that's okay.
Right.
Like, that's totally fine. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, and I think that's a positive place where this community needs to be in. It's just like, like there are companies I'll see people like crap on, like even some of my own videos. And I'm like, dude, like, no, this is awesome. Like, I love it. Just because you don't really know, or you don't have an application you'd use it for, doesn't mean it sucks.
No, that's a very good point. And it's like, with gear, I'm pretty, I don't know. I've found things that I didn't like, and I'm like, oh, this is not my thing. And then I put it down, and it came back 2 weeks later, and I was like, oh, I figured it out. Actually, this is really cool. I just didn't get it at first, or didn't work with what I was trying to make it do for whatever reason. Or this guitar I was using I didn't really get along with that one to me. But now I like it. That happens too. So you got to be open to that.
And I should mention, I'm not speaking on the quality of something. That's a whole different conversation. I'm speaking on whether I go into something and, it's not an experience that's for me, because that's, if the thing's falling apart, that's a very valid reason not to like it.
Yes. Shout out Emily from Get Offset. She had a rather interesting experience with an unwired Telecaster lately.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Shit. I'll summarize briefly. Bridge pickup not working in this telly. She's like, huh, that's weird. It was working the other day. Let me open it up and see what's up. There was 2 wires on the switch that were just hooked on. No solder, not a drop of solder on them. It wasn't a loose solder joint. It wasn't a cold solder joint. There was no solder on these things at all.
Like, oh, you flick a spark when you switch and pickups. Like,
yeah, it's like, okay, all right. Sorry you had to deal with that, Emily. But
yeah, that sucks.
I'd never seen that before, ever, and it was not on a super cheap guitar. I'll let her talk about it. I'm not going to get into it too much more, but that was pretty trippy. But yeah. I just realized how long we've been talking. We're over an hour. Look at us go.
We are well over an hour.
Oh yeah.
Man.
Well, maybe we better take a pause, and maybe we can come back and get some shenanigans done for Patreon. Does that work for you?
Oh yeah, that works.
Cool. Well, do you have anything you would like to let the people know? Anything you want to plug? Anybody you want to shout out? Anything you want to say before we go ahead and wrap this up? And everybody, I've already asked him about his pizza and Boss Pello preferences. Go back to the first episode if you want to play those questions. Anything you want to plug?
Let me think. Obviously, I want to, Emily, like you just mentioned, Get Offset. If you haven't listened to that, Pedal Playhouse, Johnny at Oakland Guitars. There's so many people I can list. Basically, I want to just thank everybody that supported us, and whether you found us however, heck, whether you hate us, just I just appreciate that people care enough to watch or listen to what we're doing. Really, I can't, all the companies that we work with, that trust us to do this and send us, products to do this, and that we have they don't look at it solely as a numbers, like, oh, your channel is at, like, your channel's not at like 50,000. We can't send you anything. All of those companies that believe in us and work with us and see us as people. Mm-hmm. And a huge shout out to Sweetwater. Not only because, but one of the reasons why is because of GearFest, a conversation Tyler and I had, and he explained the reason why they support us. And that meant a lot to me. So shout out to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Love Sweetwater. Love Tyler. Yep. Thanks, man. Yep. All right, everybody. For Jason, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
Later.
Hey, folks. Welcome back to the iced over farm. Welcome back to Blake mechanicking on his truck. I still haven't figured it out, by the way, because, I'm recording this right after I record the intro, so of course I haven't. But I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jason. I hope that you are colder and less greasy than I currently am, and I hope you are having a great day, and I hope you check out Working Class Music on YouTube, and please make sure and check out Jason's channel as well. That is going to be in the show notes, all that stuff. So please make sure you subscribe, check that out, and if you like this conversation, boy, do we get weird over on Patreon. Yeah, where you can get bonus episodes, you can get ad-free episodes, and you help support this very show that you seem to like. At least you got to this point, so I imagine you don't hate yourself so much you wouldn't put yourself through such anguish if you really hated the show. But if you like the show and you like to help it keep going, that is a good way to do it. All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you next week or, probably on the internet in some capacity very soon. Have a good one.
One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Mike Wiebe, and I'm the singer in a band called the Riverboat Gamblers.
And I'm Zach Blair. I play guitar in a band called Rise Against. Mike and I also have a band called the Draculas, and we also have this great, amazing new podcast called Zach and Mike Make 3.
Yeah, each week we're going to ask ourselves and we're going to ask our guests what 3 favorite things they are into at that moment or in their entire lives. And then we're either going to agree with them or we're going to make fun of them. And you're going to listen to it and you're going to like it, or we will make fun of you. How about that? I just flipped it on you, the person listening to this right now. But we're going to do it every week here on the Sound Talent Network. Once again, it's called Zach and Mike Make 3.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of Peer Pleasure on the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Join me each week as I explore another long-form conversation with one of your favorite musicians, actors, comedians, or creatives. From Chino Moreno of the Deftones, John Gorley of Portugal the Man, to Fat Mike from NoFX and Ian MacKaye from Fugazi and Minor Threat, we go all over the map. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, Peer Pleasure has it all. Check us out now on Sound Talent Media.